Okay, we are good to go.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I was trying to use another Google account, and so we might be 1 minute late. I trying to get everything in this field phenomenon of create a world. And I know this will make no sense what I'm about to say, but part of why Victoria and I and others come on to these conversations is that we're kind of in a we're not kind of we're in a living world. We're in a world that is occurring in a very unique and very new way. And part of our coming into these conversations is literally to be able to live it and live it with an audience. A little bit like reality shows, but I hope to goodness that we don't occur like a lot of the reality shows that are out there. We actually don't mean to. Uh, but anyway, so what happened was that I tried to come in through another one of my Google accounts. It wouldn't let me in, so I had to go back out, come back in, and start with a Google account that would let me in the door. But isn't that kind of what we're doing right now? We're kind of going out, coming back in, see what'll let us in the door in new and unusual ways. So, Victoria, I really want to thank you for being here. Victoria and I pattern a lot alike. We're both basically what, in the terminology of the field of Tantra Maat, we would call energy biased or spirit biased. And so the things our bodies have to cope with are usually Shakti surges, dynamics of the sense of being diffused, even feeling like being a particle field. And it was really great when she began to participate in the work of the field of Tantra Maat. And then she also is one of the advocates in the LOC Institute, which deals with you might say the field of Tantra Maat deals with the energetic unity with creation. And the LOC Institute deals with levels of consciousness that we're experiencing it through our mind, which is our sentient, empathic, mental perceptive mind. And we're at work about that. You could say that we research. So, Victoria, I'm just going to turn it over to you for a minute for anything you feel to say, and then I have a couple of questions I want to ask. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks. Um, I'm really struck by the mental mind sentient registers that you spoke to about how to um, make life livable here when you're an energy being in a culture that for me doesn't understand what that is for me. And so navigating through how the world is and the world that I exist in, the differences have been um, this idea of what is my own patterning in that, and how do I operate in in a real balanced and stable way so that I get access to the joy of being who I am.
Beautiful. It's interesting. The question that came up, they always surprise me. The question that came up is, I always back off and I think it's going to sound like an ad, but it actually is genuinely the question that came up, because one of the things I know about me is 25, 30 years ago, when I began to get the templates, when I began to get these downloaded in my consciousness, it was all part of a moment in time for me where I was, in quote, embodying something that we'll see if we can have the time to look at today with each other. Um, but Deb Merchant and Russ and a group of people, which some of you can go see in the first YouTube we did on Create a World, really sheltered me so that I could practice being an energy being, trying to sort out the trauma of trying to exist in flesh and trying to exist in a social structure that gave no credibility to energy, it gave no credibility to even being inspirited. You had to be religious, you had to be a part of a religion to be inspirited. And all these, there's so many of us now that are inspirited, and yet we need to either be avatars or gurus or holy women or holy men, which we actually are, but it has to live in a regimented point of view. And so when the creation templates began to download in me, they actually, the part that's always been the phenomenon for me is that there was something about the structure of the languaging based in the golden spiral that actually softened the blow of being here. I didn't get this until I'm with you, which means we're obviously operating in a shared field here. But I actually, as I began to download the different levels of consciousness in the templates, it literally softened the blow of being here. I hadn't really seen that before because my mind had a way to perceptively organize something that, unlike the language I'd been born into, and of course, even back then, I've done consults for 50, I'm moving towards 60 years. That's a little embarrassing. Even I would even say I hated English. I hated language because I couldn't bring the register of self, the register of the original nature, the original design into human beings. And as these templates began to download to me, and I and the community I was part of began to use them, we could, in quote, be here. And anything you have to say about that, since it's what just showed up in the field?
Two things are really pinging for me. The first one is you use the templates to find a way to be here. I spent the last 20 some years using yoga movement, Tai Chi movement in a space in myself that I could be here. So I surrounded myself in a culture that gave me some space so that I could navigate the rest of the world out there. And the second thing was this, how did you say it? The languaging. I was thinking about that earlier this week, that the creation templates for me, having used them the past 6 to 10 years, more so the last few years, really more in depth, they have given me a space to allow for the possibility of a language to translate what comes through me into a way to be with others. I feel like I'm on the cusp of getting some ability to language into the rest of the world, that like most of the time I don't have the words, and yet at the same time I know it's coming. It's like it's right here on the tip of my tongue, as you might say, but it's in the body in a way that it's new registers for me that I don't quite fully have comprehension of yet, but it's right there.
So you talked about Tai Chi and yoga and one other thing, and I know that you use movement with the creation templates, but my question is, what for you, because I remember I get very irritated because I have such ancient memories, and using Tai Chi and yoga as an exercise, as just exercise, I find incredibly rude. But I know you have a deeper relationship to those movements, and that you have actually taught classes and are looking to teach classes that's part of your structuring, additional structuring, I think is probably accurate, of what is that intelligence that you're paying attention to? What is it that has it go deeper, BDW, bigger, broader, deeper, wider? Just
Right.
anything you have about that.
So
And
this is the,
forcing you, of course, into having articulate.
yeah, this is the translation,
Might
the
as well practice
articulation.
here.
I was excited that it might happen here, that maybe something would download for me in the moment. So, um, yay, bring it on. Um, the Where I believe it's really pulsing for me is in the observing and observing being. I know that my whole life has been an observing register. That's my access point, if you will, to how everything operates through me is through an observing. And when I first was introduced to the templates, it would be to start with a craving. And that felt just like so foreign to me. I was like, I can't possibly get access to what I want to bring into form unless I am able to observe what I have access to that wants to come in. And so I had to I had to work with that within myself to give space for myself to be who I was, and how I did it may be different. And I've felt that way my entire being, that the way I operate is different from what I saw around me. And I would connect purposefully to people who I felt had some access to the way I operated. And when I met you, when I got access to you, it was through the old version of Spirit Hour. And I just listened and I felt a resonance of that observing operation, of that listening, broader, deeper, wider. And that gave me a place that I could rest in myself. And then the whole notion of going into the research of all of this over the spirals and other research activities that included the templates, that was the broader, deeper, wider for me. And I knew I'd find myself fully, completely. And recently, I've been looking at the word embodiment in a different way. That the teachings of yoga and other practices, embodiment is not quite, it depends on who you talk to, for me, as to what embodiment really is. And my notion was, well, embodiment is bringing my spirit into my flesh, that I could live the livable life and do what I came to do. And it wasn't trying to get out of the body. And I think that's the true essence of what movement is, whether the movement is a physical movement or an energetic movement. Because I feel that energetic movement, and it comes into the physical being in whatever way. It may be a sound, it may be a physical movement, it may be an impulse or a knowing, that I want to make room for all those sentient registers to actively guide me in time, in the moment to moment experience that I'm having.
Talk about the way we use sentient registers for the people listening.
Well, I'm using them right now as I'm in conversation with you. I'm observing my body experience, the sensations that are occurring within me, that I feel. I feel the energy patterns physically moving in the body. I feel the space within my solar plexus expanding and pulsing, and that moves up into my heart space. So I'm doing those registers as I'm listening to our conversation together. And what often happens for me, especially in a conversation, is as I'm listening to it, then the body listening gives me access to the mental knowing, which is not like thinking, it's um, knowing and trusting that whatever I'm saying next is simply from the movement of the sentience of my physical being. Like my hands are physically shaking. Like you'd think if you saw my hand right now that I had Parkinson's. And I've noticed this increasing in me in the last year. And I'm like, so the outside world would label me having some kind of Parkinson's happening. But I know it's simply my body coming online, broader, deeper, wider. And so when these moments occur, it's like an energy surge. And I start paying attention mentally to what would you have me know? And what I'm beginning to really trust and resonate in myself, in my being, is that when I stay in the attention, in the access point of this, then the download can occur. And I'm really aware right now that this is the articulation, the translation, that if I simply speak what the register is, it makes more room to have access to deeper, broader, wider.
I want to, for those of you watching or those of you that will watch, one I said in the beginning, it's actually why Create a World happened. It actually got suggested, sorry, in a download over a year ago, and now it's in play as we use a terminology in the field of Tantra Maat. And the LOC Institute is part of the field of Tantra Maat. It deals with the articulation of levels of consciousness. And, that field that Victoria is very generous and generative in does actually generate conversations as you just spoke about. And things rise in the field, things rise in the conversation, because we do have a higher intelligence in that we are breaking out of our limited intelligence. We are moving into actually dimensional intelligence, but we're not going to discuss that. We're not going to go down that tube today. But I do want to take a few minutes to really become transparent, which is also part of this conversation. And I'll start. And then recently in our field, we included two young avatars, Sandra from quantum bioengineering, and Matthias, a young avatar, gathering people all over the world for an event on February 22. I think all of us in the field can easily say we were appreciative to be in the field, because this sentience that Victoria is speaking to is resonance with creation. It's like your body is an antenna. Your body is a register. And I'm actually going to try to remember this, Victoria, and then I'll try to remind you, because you can speak to it better than I can. It's not where I pay attention. But in the field of Tantra Maat, as we began to move closer and closer to February 22nd, we were literally feeling ourselves as those antennas, as that vibrational movement that Matthias and Sandra were moving with between the unity of the cosmos and the planet. And that is an intelligence that we were moving with. And we don't think of ourselves, we think of ourselves as things with issues. We don't think of ourselves as a living intelligence. And one of the exciting parts for me, because everybody, so many of the people moving in the field of Tantra Maat and the LOC Institute are really been around getting used to ourselves as these templates of creation. So the creation templates are because human beings are templates of creation. 1 + 1 actually is 2 in some instances. And so for me, I also had an event several weeks ago where I made contact. Everybody goes immediately to their green men or gray large-headed enemies of humanity. But actually, it was one of the most beautiful experiences of my entire life, mind melding with these beings that just didn't have antagonism. They just didn't have, they weren't out to get us. They were just busy moving through time and space. And it jacked my thyroid. And years ago, when I was with Saima Lakshmi Devi, she would often have me leave the room because she said, Shakti and prana, if you get too big a surge of it, it's gonna can destroy your thyroid. And she actually had to manage that when she was younger. So the reason I'm saying this and the reason I'm presencing this, and I am not in any manner going to address that we have the solutions, because we do not. But we do, as Victoria said, we do have the power of observing. And we do have the power of a shared field of people all over the world, that as we begin to pay attention to things, we begin to notice and she also mentioned this, perfect, Victoria, as we all began to pay attention to things and use the creation templates when we needed them, we noticed that we could hold vibrationally in the extraordinary amount of energy that is roaring into our planet. And for myself and another person, when we were in a mineral pool and Riverbend, that incredible magnetic unity of ourselves with these beings out in front of us. And then February 22nd, when the planet surged awake down in her core, and where ancient knowledge, which is vibrational, which it is a living intelligence. It's not database. It is database, but it's energetically, it's sentient database. And we're actually feeling this. And the reason I started what we call the spirals of being, which is what we are back in 2014, was because I knew about this time. And why Creator World is here is we know about this time. And to some extent, we need to dismantle our previous perceptions, simply so, as they say in the observings of the creation templates, so we can be present to what there is to be present to, open up what there is to open up to, and have what there is to have. And one last thing before I turn it over to you, honey, is we need the articulation of our mental intelligence, because when our mental intelligence feels the sentientness of its thinking, it calms our system. And our biological system calm can get back to its job. So in what I'm going through right now, I'm doing everything to calm my system so that it can do its job of integrating my spirit and flesh, integrating higher energies. Because when we existed as beings, our original temple of design is to be tremendous amounts of energy. How many of you remember wishing fire come out of your finger? And doesn't it say in the Old Testament, faith can move mountains? Well, that's an energy. But our biological field has been dumbed down into survival. And there are those of us, quite a group of us, and other groups that are really trying to restore and be sane enough to be with the recalibration of our biological field back into its spiritual existence. Over to you.
Absolutely. Last year for me was using the templates with as research into rest, restore, and recover, so that this year could be recalibration. Absolutely. And so something's moving here. I'm going to pause and just listen for a moment. February 22nd for me was an access to my spine is connecting to the spine of the earth in a way that I can't quite explain it yet, but I felt and I was in the image of it on that day. And then the very next day you did the activation of the body. And you're talking about these two beautiful people, Sandra and Matthias, and being avatars. And during that activation, I had an experience of myself that I call my avatar experience. You know how in that movie he got into that um, contraption? I don't even know what it was called. And it took him into the avatar reality of himself. Well, I had the experience of my body and that contraption became one, that I was just simply that, cocooned in myself, that I didn't go anywhere. I was just there, fully one, all that capacity, that I didn't have to mentally see myself in some other reality, that I was just bringing that reality into me and feeling totally physically cocooned in the reality of Avatar. And before that occurred, I felt like I was in what I'm calling now, because it's the words that I have access to, that I was in my synovial fluid beingness. I felt it through my whole body, as my body was synovial fluid. And then it got the avatar image and experience came after that full exploration in it. So I was in a place in myself, multidimensionally, that it was so peaceful, and so I felt like I was home in a way, and yet I was in my physical being. So for me, I look at it as this is my new sentient register for that embodiment of spirit into flesh, and let's see where it goes next. Over to you.
I want to start here. I just want to keep reinforcing that we're coming on, and I invite people on to create a world, because the more we're in these living experiences, we can, and you did it beautifully, Victoria, we can pull our head out of needing to find the answer and give ourselves some breathing room just to be present to what we're present to. And the one thing that showed up for me that I want to insert into this conversation is this whole idea of the enemy. And the body is held to be the enemy probably more than any other physical matter that we have besides human beings. Everybody thinks human beings are enemies of each other, but we aren't. And I had all these non sequitur thoughts that I'm going to flow through in the next 30 seconds. One is that, how come I am always so intimate and ecstatic, except for when I'm dealing with biological integration and the loss of something I love profoundly. But most of the time, I'm in intimacy, ecstasy, passion, and peace. Most of the time, biologically and emotionally and in my physical world. And it isn't my personality. It is literally the vibrational system of which I'm a part, the field of Tantra Maat. Not, see how our mind collapses the minute we say that? Yeah. But no, it's a field phenomenon. Read science, look up science, read quantum field phenomenon. This is where Matthias was working. This is where Sandra was working. This is where LOC Institute is working. This is where I'm working. This is where others are working. Because in a field, you can begin to hold an environment that allows things rise that can't rise without it. In this case, the unity of the planet and the cosmos, and which is Tantra, the pulse of Tantra that has language called Tantra, not my name. Mm-hmm. And the other is Maat, which is harmony, balance, symmetry, proportion, grace, and beauty. Do you know, over 1,000 years, governing bodies on this planet dealt with the principles, the energetic field of Maat, so that they could operate in harmony, grace, symmetry, proportion, balance, beauty. I don't hear an enemy in either of those.
Mm.
So when this happened to me in Riverbend, when I mind melded with those beings, where their spaceship and them were one, this great fluidity, everything in my body that isn't in that great fluidity is shouting, ouch.
Mhm.
Last night or Wednesday night, when I got into that activation, and it's kind of getting humorous for me because now I'm remembering nothing when I move into the higher intelligence. It's not coming back into that mental remembrance anymore. But the one thing I remember was, and I know, and I saw it in the prophetics, is it might be a shock to anyone listening to this recording, but do you know that your amygdala are meant to let you know when you're happy? They're actually Maat. They're actually telling you when you're out of symmetry, proportion, balance, and harmony, because they register symmetry, proportion, balance, and harmony and beauty. That's what they register. And so when I was in the midst of that activation that Victoria was speaking to, and I'm in this fluidity that I felt with those same beings, not as a thing, but as a register, this thing we talked about, sentient register. Let's say it 3 times. Sentient register, sentient register, sentient register. That is not answers. It's a register. But in the activation, I was in the same fluidity of the same type of sentient register that I was in, that the amygdala actually carry in our physical body. So you have no idea the kind of conversations I'm actually having, because 99% of human beings try to fix the problem so they can go back to being dormant, so they can go back to being stick figures thinking between their ears, not being a live, vibratory, living embodiment of spirit in the flesh. Well, I don't know if I stuck everybody that participates me. I don't know if I stuck all of your fingers in the electrical circuitry or not, and now you're stuck with it. Or more than, if you saw what they had to go through the last 10 years, I'm pretty sure they chose, because those that didn't choose definitely left. There's no doubt about it. And now we're in that beautiful thing that people are speaking about where we move from the patriarchy and out of the patriarchy. We don't have hierarchy anymore. We have solidarity, and we have this equal equity of shared experience, where everything's part of everything else. Everything operates on behalf of everything else, and yet everything has a place. So now I'm in another conversation today. I'm in a conversation with 2 of my practitioners, because we have to figure this out. My TSH got jacked by an incredible surge of energy that has my whole experience of my being be harmony, symmetry, proportion, grace. In the meantime, I can hardly stay awake for 3 minutes. So we're going to figure out if I just have to give in, close the doors for a week, let my body reboot, or if there's ways we can toggle it. There are ways we can toggle through. And one of the people I learned toggling from is Victoria, because she would call me and ask me a question, and the whole way she interacted with me was trying to toggle her way through. And I actually now think in a toggle manner. Okay, well, let's try this. Let's see if this works, or how much of this do I need? Or like last night, I slept 11 hours. Very irritating for someone who, as a personality, does not like to sleep at all. So very irritating. Definitely came awake with a psychological upset if I'd lost time and I couldn't get anything done. Definitely in a stack attack. However, my body feels pretty chipper. It actually feels like it got done what it needed to get done. And my personality and point of view that has kept any separation in me in place is doesn't have the hold. Do you understand? I slept 11 hours. Doesn't matter. I'm irritated that I didn't get a whole bunch of things done, because the personality framework is based on stress and doing.
Mhm.
But our bodies are starting to move into being and having. I didn't know that was going to come out, but there you are. I
Nice.
toggled.
I'm like, I have two new language points. Toggle the wobble,
Score.
score, total score, and I feel a blog coming on my amygdala moment. That, that's how I can register that experience. Is it was my amygdala totally just being happy. I was registering happy amygdala, and it's true nature. So
Yeah,
I
higher intelligence does not occur in suffering. It does not. It can occur in intense sensation, which we can
absolutely.
identify as suffering. But suffering is only a mental concept. It is usually, well, in my experience, it is the body trying to recalibrate so it can be one with its spirit. And we can have intimacy, ecstasy, passion, peace is our foundational experience here internally. And then we begin to do the doings and we begin to have the havings in what I call paradise. Well, that felt like a whole segment all on its own.
I'd
So
like to
let's
just
move it over to
I'd like
you.
to add one little thing
Yep,
to that.
go. We're not
The
done.
toggling, the
We're slowing
toggling.
down time even.
I know. The toggling is what I have been at work about, but I didn't have a language to describe it. The days leading up to events like 222, I toggle the pressure upon my physical system in different ways now that I didn't have access to how to do that I do now. And now I can work in the language of toggle wobble in such a more clear and precise way of being at work about caring for my physical system while it integrates and recalibrates. So that's like I got my gem in this moment of understanding. So thanks.
And also the thing is, one of the things that's challenging, hold on. One of the things that's challenging is that our mindsets have us live into the future, not live in the now. And one of the powers of being able to get something that articulates an experience is that we can register that experience, and we're not in the the way the mental mind has been operating that is trying to solve a problem. It's just the next movement into a problem becomes available in the now. And in all the consults, engagements I do, and all the activations I do, in the activations, it's about moving everything into the now, because then the now resolves the moment. And if that moment can be resolved, it then can also have room for the next section of the wobble to toggle into the next moment to resolve it even deeper, broader, wider. And that's really our challenge right now, but not as a negative challenge. It is that way. And over time, many human beings will be here now, will be resolving in the moment. We're dealing with the moment of time they find themselves in. And then they find the next moments of time are more resolved. There's more space. There's more wiggle room. The wobble isn't as intense. And the phenomenon of toggling toggles huge integrative moments of oneness within one's nature that has you be more present, more alive, and more capable of being here, as if being here is a wonderful thing to be, which also probably needs to be resolved. I'm going to put me on mute. I'm hoping it doesn't for just a minute, just so I can clear my throat. It may mute us both, so hang on.
Okay.
Okay, we're good. So talk a bit, I don't know, whatever's up, talk that if you don't have a topic. What I'd like you to move into, and what if you can, is moving into what the I don't know. When I use the word challenge, everybody in the call needs to know when we use the word challenge, we're like, let me at it, game on. What's next? And when I notice when I say the word challenge, I can hear in our audience, oh no, oh,
Mhm.
why do they have to go through that? Oh, I wish they didn't have to. I wish it wasn't a challenge. Why can't it just be simple? So I realize we're juxtapositioning two ways of operating in this moment. So if those of you here can just have challenge be game on, let's play, let's figure out how, just for the next 5 minutes, that would be lovely. And then, because I've been really excited about how you're looking at providing for people and curiosity. And then curiosities inside of LOC Institute, LOC Institute's inside the field of Tantra Maat. It's we believe in spiraling, and we operate that everything's part of everything else, and it covers different layers of energetic engagement so that we can end up in a whole system response. So anything about that you have to say?
What I think is really interesting is what I was paying attention to what you said before introducing the challenge was, for me, to look at challenge as what's rising in the moment. And if we can accept the possibility that there's always something rising in the moment, it's the observing nature of who we are, to simply be with what's rising in the moment, that's a challenge. To simply be in the presence of who we are. And it has me think about the many times that you've talked about how you are a part of the ocean, a drop of the ocean. And for me, rising in the moment is riding the wave of the ocean. Are you on top of the wave, cresting and being present, or are you underneath and overwhelmed by it as what we would call the old definition of challenging?
And simply to observe that. Because what
Exactly.
we've discovered in the last 10 years, it's actually the ability to observe that releases us, not the fix.
And the toggle wobble in
Yes,
the observing.
exactly. Beautiful.
And that's what we can be at work about. And for me, the movement aspect is the way in which my system operates the toggle wobble. It may be to physically move in a practice form of movement, to explore the toggle wobble that is rising in the moment. So there are moments when, if I do feel in a wobble, I have to sit and listen and observe. I may write an observing template to see what's rising in my system, mentally, physically, emotionally. Um, and then what I would find myself doing is taking that observing, and I might go sit on my mat and breathe and feel what I'm feeling and relax myself into it, whether it's an uncomfortable feeling or a joyous experience of the moment that I'm in. And then I just let my body begin to move, to feel the inner movement and to feel what outer movement or sensations of what people call tension, to look at tension as part of the challenge, the rising to the moment. Okay, well, if my body feels a tension, what movement does it want from me? And to just spontaneously play in the movement. And so I might be like writing a template with silly words because I don't have language. Let my body write the template with spontaneous movements. And almost always that spontaneous movement of just wiggling around and toggling through the tensions to find the riding the wave feeling. And once I get on the wave of it, then I morph into yoga or Tai Chi movements just naturally. I just feel what rises in a structure of it. And what's interesting to me is I've never thought that before, that the download of articulation has just come through in the field of being in this moment. And so I'm so glad it's being recorded so I can go and write it all down later.
The other thing for me is that I was thinking about that fire in Boulder and how we'd been in that dragon activation when the fire started in Grass Valley, California, and I was thinking about Tai Chi and yoga and all of that is the same, because it's all about who we are with creation. In other words, Tai Chi and yoga didn't start as manipulation of the body. They started so that human beings could be in the power of creation. They could be in the movement of creation itself. So that fits. And then the non sequitur, not quite non sequitur, the stream of thought went to when I was doing that dragon activation, when we had an active fire in Grass Valley. And we learned that movement of fire. We learned its, I would say, intelligence or its ways. And I remember when that fire started around Boulder, one of the things we moved into, it wasn't like we applied it. We moved into that calm. Yeah. We just moved into it. And within we didn't cause it. We just moved into the area of creation within which calm occurs.
Yeah.
So in that arena where calm occurs, the winds calmed, not as a cause, but as an intelligence that became present in the field. Adding to that, I was watching somewhere in the last few days, I was watching this thing is called Stitcher. It's about someone who can move into people's thoughts after they're dead. But one of the quantum conversations that they had in there is that we think that this is bigger than this, but they're exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're exactly the same. So calm here and calm here are exactly the same. So it can be everything from a body to a fire. And this is the phenomenon of quantum thinking that occurs when we're working with the 7 creation templates, but and the 2 observings, but it doesn't occur like an application. It occurs like the ocean moving with. That's really what I got out of what you said. And when we have more comprehension of something, of a state of existence, when we have more comprehension of it, we literally are more in unity with it. The more we feel and comprehend it, and for a human being, the art of being human is articulation. It is language that gives us access, that is the access to capabilities and skills that have been dormant, that are rising in humanity again. Hence why we started these conversations and why LOC Institute and Curiosity are busting your chops to get things in place and in play, so that you're at the door for those that find it. Anything for you?
Yes, something that rises for me about the way we engaged with the Boulder fire and the state of calmness that registers for me. We moved from observing into observing, being in the state of calm as a self and community, to be in connection with creation being through fire, that we simply moved as observing being calm.
And in that craving,
awareness.
and in that craving can occur.
Yes.
You know, the first templates I got were the observings. It's just that you couldn't get many people in the door of observing first and discovering what was rising in the field as a craving, not what I craved, because I crave was so strong. that we had to give it a place. We had to give it a place that operate because, I crave, if we create it in something that's life enhancing and life generating, you then get access to this field we're talking about. I call it paradise and call it all sorts of things, oneness. But it was to give access to the field. And then the insistence that you had to observe the template of craving was literally so that the observer could build its strength, stamina, capacity. Also, it's interesting. I'm about to do a body of work. They base it on observing. So observing is becoming the new, what's the word I want? Like recovery was a buzzword for years. Then transformation came in, took part of that buzzing. And now we're really moving into the buzzword becoming being the observer, because that's where be here now and everything able to shift in a moment of time can occur. All that was discovery also.
Wow. And I just got a visual, my eyes do a sentient register of comprehension of, I have a place.
You have an eye that can finally have a place. That's really true. Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of people. I remember in a channel message, gosh, it was a long, long time ago. And then I used it for a long time during whatever year that was, a long, long time ago, because I was just so clear that during the times ahead, it's the sensitives and the empaths that will be carrying the consciousness of the movement of creation on the planet. And those that are still operating in trying to say things are real, trying to say these are truths that we have to believe in, that'll start to diminish because the truths aren't holding. And as we see, it's breaking up humanity into a huge level of separation. The beauty about humanity, however, is it can't survive separations. It's only a matter of time before new mindsets begin to generate unity. We're just seeing the end of a fever, a pretty ferocious fever of separation. So we have about 7 minutes. I really want to turn it over to you for whatever you want to, whatever's present for you, whatever's there. This has been, as Trudy the Bag lady would say, jam-packed and fully, and something full. I can't remember. Jam-packed and really full. And so over to you for whatever's there for you.
Oh, you're going to love this. It's bringing tears to me. From my childhood, one of my favorite things is at the end of the Carol Burnett show, where she came out with her bucket and her cleaning outfit, and she sat on her bucket and she just told a story. And it always just gave me the sense of there's something right in this, that there's a place deep in the heart of people that the trueness can come out, and it can come through the mop lady. That is, and then the little wiggle of the ear to say, yeah, we're all together here. And that's so much of how I have operated in being with another in the field is I just want to bring the presence of who I am through the LOC Institute to offer people on their own self-study how they can gain access to themselves the way I did, through using movement, through using templates, through observing being, and finding how to register their own place as a being in this magnificent planet. That's who I am, and I adore working with people one-on-one and in groups in different ways. Like, bring it on, what version do you want? So I'm just a mop lady.
I love that. I don't have an equal analogy. Now you're going to have me while I'm trying to get my TSH settled. I'll have something to think about all day rather than all I do is go back to bed. Not right now, however, I'm juiced at the moment.
Right.
And but it's very interesting. When is your all's when is the LOC YouTube? What day is that?
Mondays.
At 9?
Yeah, 9 Mountain Time, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
And then do you all have a
And I will be on with Electra. We will have a conversation as a follow-up to my conversation with you today. We'll just see where it goes on Monday. So it should be quite interesting.
That's great. I was just thinking for those of you that are on, there is a LOC-Institute Facebook page. And then I was just trying to figure out a way for people to get questions to you all between now and Monday. By the way, it's totally spontaneous. I didn't realize you were going to be on Monday.
Okay.
So I think the best way to do it is for those of you that are on YouTube live today or see it later, is just put the questions in the comments here, and then we'll pick them up, or your interest or things you would like to hear deeper, BDW, deeper, broader, wider, for that I can turn over to Electra and Victoria. And I also want to say why I'm excited that it came out this way is that one of the things that we work on in the Institute, not so much me, I am busy developing the capacity of the skills and capacities of 2 archetypical archetypes. One's the Magi, the other's the Guardian. And I'm busy building back the realms of being the beloved. So those are my 3 interests. And so create a world for me is where I get to build a field with another, build the strength of a field of consciousness with another, and the multidimensional, multi-diverse ways that consciousness actually occurs. But the LOC Institute is really where people can actually self-study and self-train, and we're really they are really working to meet the needs of a consciousness rising. So it doesn't have any aspect of giving answers or solving problems. It really is an institute where we're instituting the capacity for the certain consciousness, certain aspects of consciousness rising. And I think I want to complete today, unless you have something, I'll give you a final moment. But when I talk about the 7 levels of consciousness, we are very intelligent beings, and our consciousness is meant to operate in our ability to comprehend is meant to operate in almost an accordion manner, or not almost, in an accordion manner. It's meant to stretch out to include being one with the presence of creation itself and being creation itself, all the way down to handling survival. It's like a spiral that goes out. So the 7 different templates actually build back the capacity for this extraordinary consciousness, this accordion spiraling consciousness that human beings are. The 2 observing templates are persistent. You can use them all the time because they build the capacity for you to observe. And given that we are no longer where we were, and we're not yet fully capable to comprehend what is occurring, we are building into building a new future within, building a new matrix of consciousness together within which new futures rise that are not based on the survival or the suffering from the past. On that, thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everybody that's here. Have a precious day.